My knuckles throbbed, still slick with blood. Not all mine. I could taste it, metallic, a bitter tang on my tongue. The hallway reeked. Stale beer, sweat, and something faintly floral like cheap air freshener trying to mask the rot beneath. My apartment door, dented and scraped, hung open like a broken jaw. Inside, overturned furniture, shattered glass, and the lingering echo of our screams. I remembered her face, contorted with fury, spitting insults like venom. The way her eyes, usually so bright and playful, had turned cold, calculating. I'd seen that look before in the eyes of cornered animals, in the reflections of shattered mirrors. It was the look of someone pushed too far, someone with nothing left to lose. I ran a hand through my hair, sticky and damp. My head pounded, a dull roar behind my eyes. I couldn't remember how it had started, only the escalating spiral of anger, the vicious words, the blur of fists connecting with flesh. I'd never hit a woman before, not like that. But then again, she'd never smashed a beer bottle over my head before. I gingerly touched the gash above my ear. It stung, a sharp, insistent reminder of the night's chaos. The fight hadn't solved anything. It had only left us both bloodied, bruised, and drowning in the wreckage of our rage. Dawn bled through the grime-coated windows, painting the room in shades of gray. I lay on the floor, amidst the debris of the fight, my body a landscape of aches and stiffness. Each breath was a shallow, rattling thing, a reminder of the ribs I was sure were cracked. I closed my eyes, but sleep offered no escape, only a dizzying replay of the night's violence. I forced myself up, the room tilting around me. My reflection in the cracked mirror was a stranger, bruised, swollen, eyes bloodshot and wild. I looked away, disgusted. The air hung heavy, thick with the stench of stale alcohol and regret. I needed to clean this mess, to erase the evidence of our shared destruction. I moved mechanically, picking up broken glass, righting overturned furniture. Each shard, each splintered piece of wood was a testament to our fury, a silent accusation. I worked in a daze, my mind numb, my body a machine fueled by adrenaline and self-loathing. As I swept up the last of the broken glass, a sharp rap on the door made me flinch. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat in the silence. I froze, every muscle tense, every sense on high alert. I knew who it was. I didn't need to look through the peephole to be sure. I opened the door a crack, my body a shield between the wreckage of my apartment and the woman standing in the hallway. She looked worse than I felt. A purple bruise bloomed across her cheekbone, her lips split, and her eyes were red-rimmed, filled with a mixture of defiance and something else. Shame? Regret? "We need to talk," she said, her voice hoarse, barely a whisper. I hesitated, my hand still gripping the doorknob as if it were a lifeline. The anger, the raw, primal rage that had consumed me the night before flickered within me, threatening to reignite. I swallowed, forcing it down. "About what?" I asked, my voice raspy, unused. I knew there was no point in pretending this hadn't happened, that the air between us wasn't thick with the memory of our violence. We were both wounded, both bearing the physical and emotional scars of our battle. "About us," she said, her gaze steady, unflinching. I met her eyes, a silent conversation passing between us. The hallway was quiet, the air thick with anticipation. I knew this moment, this fragile truce, wouldn't last. I stepped aside, letting her into the apartment. She moved cautiously, her eyes scanning the wreckage, a grimace flitting across her face. The air hung heavy between us, thick with unspoken words, with the weight of our shared history. I closed the door behind her, the sound echoing in the silence. "I'm sorry," she said, her voice barely audible. I looked at her, surprised. I hadn't expected an apology, hadn't expected any kind of vulnerability from her. I had expected more anger, more accusations. "For what?" I asked, my voice flat, devoid of inflection. I wasn't sure if I could forgive her, if I could forgive myself. The memory of our fight, the raw, animalistic fury, was still too fresh, too visceral. For everything she said, her gaze dropping to the floor, for starting it, for hitting you. I saw a tear trace a path through the dust on her cheek, and for a moment I felt a flicker of sympathy. She was hurting just as much as I was. I reached out, my hand hovering in the space between us. I wanted to touch her, to offer her some kind of comfort, but I hesitated. I wasn't sure if she wanted my touch, if it would bring her solace or pain. I let my hand fall back to my side, the gesture heavy with defeat. "It wasn't all your fault," I said, my voice rough. I knew I bore my share of the blame. We both had our demons, our past hurts that we carried like weapons, always ready to strike. Last night we'd both let our anger get the best of us. She looked up at me then, her eyes filled with a mixture of emotions I couldn't decipher. I saw pain, regret, and maybe, just maybe, a flicker of hope. The silence stretched between us, heavy with unspoken words, with the weight of our shared past. "What do we do now?" she asked, the question hanging in the air between us. I didn't have an answer. I didn't know if we could come back from this, if our relationship could survive the wreckage of our rage. I watched her leave, her footsteps echoing in the empty hallway. I closed the door behind her, shutting out the world, shutting out the pain. I was alone again, surrounded by the remnants of our fight, the shattered pieces of our relationship scattered around me like broken promises. I sank down onto the floor, my back against the wall, my head in my hands. I felt empty, drained, as if the fight had sucked the life out of me. I closed my eyes, but all I saw was her face, contorted with anger, and my own reflection in the cracked mirror, bruised and broken. The silence pressed in on me, heavy and suffocating. I was alone, truly alone. I had no one to blame but myself. I had pushed her away, pushed everyone away with my anger, my violence, my inability to let anyone in. I was left with nothing but the silence, the pain, and the bitter taste of regret. I was lost in the labyrinth of my own making, with no escape in sight. I was adrift in a sea of loneliness, and I knew with a certainty that chilled me to my core that I was drowning.